All right, hi there. It's me, Brian. I'm going to go over an example of paired data. So we've got, there's no context to this, no word problem. It just says assume the differences are normally distributed. This is a statement that allows us to kind of use a t distribution for our hypothesis test or confidence interval. But anyway, we have observations, 8 observations. We have X and Y observations. We don't know what they are. They're just numbers. Determine the differences for each pair of data. Okay, so you can go through each of them one by one, do a subtraction and get the differences. I'm going to show you how to do that in StatCrunch. So we won't open the data in StatCrunch. Okay, and we go up to, we have our observation numbers, which is kind of immaterial. X, Y. Okay, so under the stat menu, we want to go under T-stats, paired T-stats. And now sample 1 is going to be our X values, sample 2 our Y values, and we want to just say we want to click on the save differences. We don't worry about like anything for hypothesis tests or anything like that. Just hit compute, and in fact, I'm going to just close that so I can see the differences are all here for me. So I'm going to just move this a little bit over to the side so that I can read those as I'm filling this in. I'm just going to fill them in one by one. All right, compute D bar and SD. Okay, so that's the average, our sample average of the differences, and the standard deviation of the averages. So we have the data right here in this column. Let's just do our summary stats for that column. For the differences column, we want to get the standard deviation and the standard and the sample average. So the mean is 3 decimal places, negative 2.625, and the standard deviation 3 decimal places, 1.227. I'm going to just type it in, 1.227, because I have to round up, 1.227. Okay, now we're going to do a hypothesis test. So let's go back to here. I've got the differences now in this column. I could do a hypothesis test, a t-test, just on this one column, but I'm going to just go back to, I have results for the paired t. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to set this hypothesis test. I'm checking whether the difference is less than 0. So I want to set that hypothesis. In fact, that's the first thing that I'm asked. I want to check, so you can see it says test if the mean of the differences is less than 0 at this level of significance. So you want to, what's the correct null and alternative hypothesis? This, what you're testing always goes in the alternative. The null is going to be equal to 0. That's the way it is in this course, in most intro stats courses. The equality always goes in the null hypothesis. The thing that we're interested in testing, it goes in the alternative. So we do that, and then I think we're going to perform the hypothesis test, get a p-value. So I'm going to hop back over to StatCrunch. I have this all checked off. I'm going to just click compute and get my my p-value, 0.0003. It asks me to round to 3 decimal places, so I'm actually going to be rounding that to 0. P-value isn't exactly 0, but it's close enough to 0. What do we do when we have a 0 for a p-value? Reject the null hypothesis without hesitation. A low p-value means we reject the null hypothesis. So we reject the null because there is sufficient evidence. A low p-value means there's lots of evidence in favor of the alternative. Okay, so that's our conclusion. And a 95% confidence interval. Let's go back to StatCrunch to get a confidence interval, 95%. Let's go to options and edit the options for this. Inference, we're going to change it from a hypothesis test. I don't need to save the differences anymore. To a confidence interval, 95%, 0.95 is already selected. Click compute. And now we have our confidence limits. And I'm asked to round to 2 decimal places, negative 3.65, and the other one is negative 1.59, so I have to round that to negative 1.6. I'll just type that in, negative 1.6. All right.